Today, Amazon workers decline unionization effort. But is the effort over?
Then, is Apple good or evil or both?
And Google's employees continue to fight for a safer workplace.
I'm Stephen Rosenbaum, and this is Future Forward.
I'm Alexis Guardado. Let's launch.
Hey, Alexa.
Hey, happy Sunday, Steve.
Indeed. It occurred to me this morning that while I love doing this podcast, I love it so much more with the name who we will not say out loud no longer on Twitter.
I agree.
There's just a lightening of the universe.
I mean, I don't want to jinx it, but so far 2021 is looking a lot brighter than 2020.
Are you going to go to a concert this summer?
Yeah, we didn't talk about it, but it depends. I actually think, would I go today? Absolutely not. Would I go over the summer? I think it depends on the venue and are the people who are there vaccinated?
Yeah, well, let's save this for another pod because this whole who's vaccinated, who's not thing. We're going to do three things. We're going to do Amazon for a bit, then we're going to talk about Apple, and then we're going to talk about Google because they all have news, and the Amazon thing is where we should start because I'm puzzled by the union vote.
Yeah, I sent this to you earlier in the week because I was like, huh, really? And I will say, I'll tell listeners, I am biased because I worked at a company that was the first tech company to voluntarily recognize a union, which is Glitch. And so, yeah, I don't know. I was surprised.
So I went through a bunch of emotional reactions to this. My first reaction was Amazon must have had some shady arm breaker goons working the floor saying, if you vote union, bad things will happen. Then I thought, or maybe, Amazon's argument. So we put up a couple of things. We found it was published, the Amazon internal letter, public letter, it's on their website, about the unionization vote. And what they kind of are saying is, hey, you've got it pretty good here, and we're working hard to make the workplace safer and employees safer, and the union is not going to make that happen faster.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed more carrot than stick.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, were you following the Twitter conversation from Amazon News?
No.
So they have an account on Twitter, Amazon News, and that was actually really surprising to me because they were kind of going into union threads and responding very defensively. And the way they were posturing, it was like a very almost like angry tone, which surprised me. It was like it surprised me from a corporate communications effort because usually like a best practice is like companies should not engage, like a big company should not engage in a single individual on a major controversial issue. It just makes the company look small.
And so for them to take that tone, was that the head of comms said to the person who's running social, who said to the person who works for them, who's running, here's the tone we want with their meet, or hey Jeff, we're gonna be combat, or was it just one rogue Twitter account gone?
Well, supposedly it was endorsed from the top, meaning like it was endorsed by Jeff Bezos. Like there was an entire program where Amazon employees were sort of trained to mitigate Twitter commentary and respond pretty aggressively. Like it was something that Jeff Bezos said that he wants to see more of. He wants to see employees and the voice of the company take a more, I guess, direct stance, which was, again, it was a little bit bizarre for me to see. And I don't necessarily think that is, I think we can decouple sort of the corporate comms from union bashing. Like, I don't know what they did on the ground. I'm just saying, as like an outsider observing all of this play out, it was weird. Even the way the Amazon post was written.
Let's go back up to 30,000 feet. I mean, who's the winner and who's the loser in this chapter? I mean, Amazon's the winner because they
got what they want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, are employees the loser? Is it as simple as that? I don't think so.
I don't think it's as simple as that. I think, I mean, it kind of goes back to like, you know, pro-union, not pro-union. There, I can see both sides of it. I think Amazon is always going to come down on the side of we pay employees $15 minimum wage. We do things other companies don't, and are sort of shifting the conversation towards that $15 minimum wage conversation. And in some ways, what that does is diminish the other things that a union could potentially advocate for. Other policies, you know, it might mean longer lunch breaks. It might mean floating holidays. It might mean, you know, how many weeks notice do you get before being laid off? It might mean severance. Like, there's so many things that a union can do to really advocate and on behalf of workers. And so they miss that opportunity to do so by not having this vote.
So for listeners who are watching or listening to us live, if you jump into the comments, I think this would be a really good place to get some thoughts from you. So we'd love to, you know, this is a complicated one. I don't think, well, Alexa, maybe you do actually have a feeling about it. I mean, as you started out the pod, I mean, you were on the early edge of unionization. And it was, you know, I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, you know, net, what was, you know, without sharing internal information about Glitch, like personally, was the experience, what was the experience?
I mean, I think what's interesting about, it was obviously my first time. It was, I think, everyone's first time. It's really unprecedented in tech. I would say as a manager, you know, it immediately feels adversarial. Like, you just, from a policy standpoint, cannot talk to your colleagues in the same way. You know, we were given a lot of guidance because we did not want anything to even come across as union busting. And so it put me personally in a position where even if I was just curious and I wanted to engage in a conversation, like, well, what are the things that you're not satisfied with? Like, what led you to this? Like, you could not engage in that dialogue. And so, like, that alone completely changes, I think, the dynamic within an organization. In general, you know, we did have layoffs, and the union actually was successful in putting us collectively in a position to reevaluate our terms of separation, which I actually think went a really long way for colleagues.
Okay, that's interesting. So here's the subhead from the New York Times. The company's decisive victory deals a crushing blow to organized labor, which had hoped the time was right to start making inroads. Crushing blow. Blow. To not to Amazon workers, not to Amazon unionization efforts, but to organized labor broadly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was a lot of growing momentum in sort of within tech. again, you could say Kickstarter, Glitch, we were just like small fry compared to the likes of Google and Amazon. But there is increasingly more discourse around tech unionization efforts. And so I think that is sort of where that language comes into play. And also, frankly, where I was surprised. I think as a whole, we are entering an era of work where employees want to have a voice. They want to have leverage when it comes to negotiating policies. They do not want to be handed sort of top-down mandates without there being a dialogue. And I think that is sort of the ethos of these efforts. And I think voting this down potentially reinforces, anti-union rhetoric and reinforces or signals the idea that, like the big bosses, senior leadership, corporate giants, like they still have the upper hand.
So the numbers are fascinating. Workers cast 1,798 votes against the union and 738 votes in favor. And fewer than 30% of the votes tallied. So positive was 30%. And it's a 6,000 person warehouse in Bessemer. So first of all, just thinking about 6,000 people working on a factory floor of any kind, that's a massive. So think about that. That means, of the 6,000 people, 4,000, almost 4,500 didn't vote. Well, a little less, 3,800 didn't vote.
I think it's complex and people are conflicted. And also the people who opposed it, they might just do it purely on the principle of, I don't want to have to pay dues for something that I just don't really care that much about.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if that was the pushback.
Like people don't like to be told how to spend their money.
It'd be interesting if anyone in the comments knows if there's been interviews with pro and con employees somewhere that I'd love to hear a podcast where people talk to Amazon employees that voted. That would be very, very interesting. Now, meanwhile, there is another, before we get on to Apple and Google, there is another bit of Amazon news that kind of like pops out from the side of the universe. Far-right extremists allegedly plot to blow up Amazon data center.
I totally missed this story until you sent it over. And yeah, I mean, it's like out of a movie.
So
this guy in Texas was upset, right? He basically, when he found out that Parler was getting kicked off AWS servers, got mad at Amazon and then channeled his energy towards a plot to blow up a Northern Virginia data center that he believed was housing, CIA and other federal information.
So, and meanwhile, this genius plotter buys the explosives from an undercover agent.
Right. And then meets with them in person to tell them the whole thing.
I couldn't find an undercover agent if I had a flashlight and do you have to go on Google and type in, I want to buy a bomb, and then have the FBI see that and send hey, we saw you Googled us. And so we're here to sell. How do you get ensnared into undercover FBI land?
He was just texting or messaging on the forum with the agent.
The phrase dumbass comes to mind. I mean, that being said, I hadn't really put together until I read this, the Parler. I mean, I knew that there was some kind of a plot, but I hadn't put together the Parler AWS. I thought maybe he'd gotten a delayed delivery of dog food or something. No.
Yeah, and he was supposedly at the Capitol, but didn't go inside, and was upset that they all showed up and clearly didn't want to get anything done because they didn't come armed.
Look, if there wasn't already enormous focus at Amazon data security, and I mean, there clearly is, there clearly was, and there clearly is now. That being said, probably not helpful that Wired published a picture of the data center and its location. Could have done without that.
I don't know if they're secret. Like, I feel like Amazon, Facebook, you can see data centers everywhere. But it's also not how it works. Like, this one data center, if something happens to it, because this happened with Facebook, there was like a plane that crashed into a data center. It just falls over into the next data center.
Yes, that's exactly right. All right, so let's move on to Apple. I had a very bipolar Apple week.
Okay.
I did. I did. I don't know if you listened to the Kara Swisher interview with Tim Cook.
Not yet.
It was unbelievably interesting to me.
Well, I mean, I'm excited to listen to this. Kara Swisher is such a ball buster. I don't know. Do you think she was hard on him?
No, she was gentle, but she asked good questions. She didn't.
Yeah, she's always really thoughtful.
I've decided that in the worldview we live in, I put Joe Biden and Tim Cook in the same category.
Oh, like the people who you don't think are gonna like kind of do a good job, and they are?
No. Steve Jobs, big, larger than life character. Tim Cook comes in as his number two, and you presume that he's going to be the rebound relationship that won't make it around the bend. Joe Biden, vice president. Obama, big, larger than life character, charismatic, great speaker, 8-year, first African-American president. Joe Biden, elderly, grandfatherly guy with white hair, comes in, and you expect that he's going to be kind of, but both of them, I think, had under lower expectations and then are over delivering. And I mean, Tim Cook is not charismatic. He's not.
No.
He's not. Like, there's been no press out of this interview. There's been no buzz. He didn't break any news. You didn't listen to it. But it was fascinating in hearing what the issues are that they're focused on.
Yeah. I'm behind on Sway. The last episode was the Borat one. Borat interview.
Well, I mean,
I like him. I like Sacha Baron Cohen.
So Kara's tricky, right? Because like sometimes she gets really acerbic and kind of sharp, and you're like, okay, I need a little break, like little. So I'll just rattle off. They talked a lot about privacy, and they talked a lot about data privacy, and he talked about it with such precision and such depth that it was clear that they're not like it's core to the company. It's core to his vision of the company. And whenever Kara tried to get him to talk about Facebook and the argument with Facebook, he kind of shrugged his shoulders verbally and was like, I don't work for that company. I've never met Elon Musk. He's like, he's basically like, we're sticking to the knitting and we think privacy matters. And wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We also don't make any money selling people's privacy. So we're not an ad network. But Apple is it the largest company in the world? Second largest? I mean, so you're talking to somebody who literally can scratch his left pinky and everybody's iPhone needs a new headphone jack. I mean,
right.
I mean, this is an enormously powerful man. And he does not present himself that way.
Yeah.
Just a little hardware maker.
Yeah, but his actions speak louder than words. Like if Jobs was loud, Tim Cook is not loud, but the way he is running Apple is still very Jobs-esque. The principles are still there. Privacy, control, end-to-end ecosystem control.
He talked a lot about TV, a lot about video, more than I'd ever heard him before. Quite serious. I presume he has a button on his desk, and he puts his hand over it. I don't know, once a week, once every 6 weeks, once every hour, and it says "Buy Netflix," and he puts his hand. He goes, no, but like that. I mean, he's got the money. Netflix is a public company. He could buy Netflix. He could do that tomorrow. Apple TV has been hit or miss.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's the reason why the buy Netflix thing is an interesting conversation. Apple, in its DNA, is not a market leader, ever.
They are. They're not like first movers.
Ever. They are
with hardware. If you think about the iPhone and iPad, well, they weren't the first like handheld mobile device, but the iPhone was pretty revolutionary.
Yeah, but that's exactly my point. They are the definition. They are the textbook definition of a fast follower. Going back to the iPod.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a Trio before I had my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I loved my Trio.
Mm-hmm.
I loved the keys on the Trio, the little chiclet keys. I
miss tactile things like that. I do.
My son says it's generational, and typing on glass requires you to start at birth. But my point is, if you think about Tim Cook as the ultimate leader of the fast follower company, then the question is, they're letting Disney Plus get launched, they're letting Paramount Plus get launched, they're letting Netflix start to lose market share, they're letting all of these, everyone's now in the streaming business, and they're Discovery and whatever. Their content packages. I mean, I do not subscribe, for example, to Apple News.
Right.
I should be their customer.
But you are on Apple TV, right? Like you watch Ted Lasso, and I think you mentioned some other Apple shows, or was that your trial?
I don't remember. I don't remember. And I had an Apple TV box, and I got rid of it.
I mean, I will say, me, I subscribe to everything. I'm not subscribed to Apple TV. It's the only one. Like, I have Discovery Plus over Apple in that.
I mean, the other thing is, things are now moving around enough. I started watching the National Geographic multi-part Aretha Franklin Genius 2 nights ago. Mm-hmm. On Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure I exactly understand how it got from National Geographic to Hulu so fast, but yay for them.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, pro tip for listeners, the Genius Aretha Franklin multi-part is spectacular.
Wow.
Spectacular. All right, so that was the good Apple part of my bipolar week, and then we get to the bad part of Apple, which is this, request that they've come testify to the Senate, and Apple going, yeah, no.
Mm-hmm. I didn't have like a negative reaction to it. It was more because in some ways, right? We talked about the hearings the other week. It was kind of a whole lot of nothing. It was a whole lot of Jack Dorsey, Mark Zuckerberg, and Sundar Pichai just like not answering. And so I actually don't blame Tim Cook for being like, no, these people are not equipped to engage in a meaningful conversation about these issues, and we're not going to participate. But I would have rather they said that instead of just not show.
So Amy Klobuchar said this kind of like creepy, bad things will happen if you don't show up. What do you think she meant?
I think the government is going to try to regulate Apple. Like, they're already trying to do that.
Yeah, I thought it was an empty threat.
Right.
All right. So time for one more. Google. More than 500 Alphabet employees demand Google stop protecting harassers. By the way, I refuse to call it Alphabet. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's always confusing to me. I'm always like, wait, what company? Yeah. Yeah, so the issue is if you file a harassment complaint to HR, then they will actually facilitate a meeting with you and the harasser in the same room.
Well, that seems like a really bad idea.
I didn't even know that they could do that. Like, that just feels bizarre to me. Because I will say, and Steve, you probably have done this with your current employer. There in New York State, there is a mandatory like harassment training that all managers are legally required to take. And one of the things in that training talks about retaliation, right? Like if you file a complaint, you should be protected by law, and your job should not be under threat. Anonymity should sort of be not anonymity in the sense that it's like, it's not going to be like publicly known broadly that you filed a complaint. So this just felt like kind of like an interesting practice that is different than policies I've been exposed to.
I'm a romantic. And so whenever I think about Google, I just think fondly back to the don't be evil phase of the company.
Do no harm. Yeah.
And now they're like only be evil in small doses.
Yeah.
Or be evil, but have your PR people not get it in the paper.
Yeah. So again, this is where though, and this is why it's a little complicated. Like this is a good example though of like when you have a union and you go through a collective bargaining process, this is one of those policies that can be negotiated. What's interesting is in the article, it does say that this is something that employees don't have to engage in, however, contractors do. And Google's union efforts specifically include contractors as well. And I think they make it really hard on themselves by doing that. Because Google is never going to say, we care about our contractors as much as our full-time employees.
Yeah. No. And then there is the question of what signatures on an open letter, how much pressure that puts on the company.
Right.
All right. Well, we are out of time. A good week. Next week is going to be a better week. It's going to be sunny and spring-like, and more people are going to get vaccinated. Yep. And with that, I would say, have a lovely rest of your weekend.
See you next week.
See you next week.